The Vatican Library has been cracked again. It reveals more secrets. Truth stands vindicated. Stay tuned. Guys, you know how much I love trying to go and hunt out old works, especially ones that document the history of the Sabbath. And, it's often a challenge. I view it as like a puzzle. One of the things, though, that I have found here recently about the Waldenses is there are some works that reference much older works, but those much older works are very difficult to find. But if we're going to do a quick refresher for those of you tuning in, just so you know what I'm talking about. So the Waldenses were a group of people in the Alps, right? Swiss Alps who escaped Roman persecution and kept the truth of the gospel alive during Rome's reign of terror. Benedict Pictet in 1732 said that there are some who give another reason for these names and who say that the Albigenses and Vaudois was another name for Waldenses, were called Passagani because they traveled from one place to another, Paterines because they suffered many persecutions, from a Latin name which means to suffer, Torlupon because they lived in places which were rather the haunts of wolves than of men, Sabbatarians because they did not receive Sunday and rejected the feasts of the Roman Church. So he recognizes that there were multiple names that these people were called. Okay, now you can look up this work on Google Books, but I'm not going to do that right now. But let's catch you up to speed on, once again, some of the works that have talked about Sabbath keeping. Heinrich Kramer in 1501 said that they did not recognize Roman authority. There was their blindness over the change of the Sabbath. You can see that, remember that Torlupon that we just mentioned? So Henenbert and you've got Paul Buzard, who both recognized that, hey, they did not celebrate Sunday. They celebrated La Samedi, or Saturday, in lieu of the Dimanche. Okay, but then you've also got even Francis Pegny, who was Inquisitor, in the Directorum Inquisitorum, which was like this manual for the Inquisitors by Nicholas Eymerich, recognized that many used to think it came from the Sabbath and they observed the Sabbath according to the custom of the Jews. But here's the one that I wanted to track down, the Passagani. This was a 12th century French Waldense, or well, this was about the 12th century French Waldenses by an inquisitor, Bonacursus. Bonacursus stated not a few, but many know what are the errors of those who are called Passagani, and how nefarious their beliefs and doctrine are. First, they teach that we should obey the law of Moses according to the letter, the Sabbath and circumcision, and the legal precepts still being enforced. So, how do we track this down? And by the way, here's another one. Even Ignaz von Dollinger recognized that many kept the Sabbath. This work has long been cited as in Luc de Archery's Spicilegium Collectio. Now, Spicilegium Collectio was a work that was published. You've got a copy here on Google Books from 1723. And in this work, you can look up the Passagi, right there. And there it is in the Vita Hereticorum. If you scroll up here is Bonacursus, the Quam Preficit Bonacursus quandam hereticos nunc autum catholicus, right there. There's the Vita Hereticorum. And where he talks about the Passagani is like, well, you can Google it right here, Passagi, and find it. There it is. So this is where he talks about the Passaganis keeping the seventh-day Sabbath. Now, he also mentions, I'll just add here that he also mentions circumcision. But of course, we know that many recognize that that was kind of like a gloss, if you will, that it was not because they were circumcised, but because they kept the Jewish Sabbath, where the Waldenses called in sabbatati. So, we can argue back and forth whether or not then sabbatati were the same as the Passagani and etc. But I think you can already recognize that some recognize these names were being used to refer to very same or very similar people groups as far as that goes. But I would say one of the things that I recognize as a constant is that every time these people keep the Sabbath, they're referred to with the slur of Judaism, and so there's a lot of assumptions that are made about that, but not really fact. Okay, so they kept the Sabbath, but did they do circumcision? Eh, I would say there are some who don't agree. But once again, my curiosity was how do we go and prove this work from Bonacursus? Because Bonacursus has been mentioned in a lot of our works talking about him. For example, Dr. Gerhard Damsteegt, kind of the one of the leading Adventist researchers for the Waldenses. Of course, there's been several in history, but he's probably one of the more modern ones. You've got Bakioki and maybe some others who've commented previously. But here we have this work, Decoding Ancient Waldensian Names, New Discoveries, from Andrews University Seminary Studies. And he mentioned Bonacursus in it. And his statement right here was that although there's no record that Waldo and his followers observed the seventh-day Sabbath, we know that several movements related to the Waldenses were reported to have observed this custom. The Waldensian historian Emilio Comba admits that northern Italy was a stronghold of various dissident groups associated with the Waldenses. And so he cites Bonacursus, Vita Hereticorum, quoted in Comba, but of course the original is the Spicelagium Collectio, right? Well, folks, how do we go back and find that original citation? That was what I was excited to do. I wanted to say, hey, where do we go find Bonacursus? He's a 12th century Inquisitor. We need the 12th century manuscript, right? I mean, this is the 21st century. It's all got to be digitized, right? Well, not always so lucky, but anyhow, but we are blessed. And I went to Vatican Digital Library and I typed in Bonacursus. I was like, is there anything out there, right? Well, when I searched, I came up with three options here. The top one being ott.lat.136. La manifestatio heresis catororum quam fecit Bonacursus. That doesn't sound like Vita Hereticorum to me. So already I was thinking, well, but then I realized this is a bibliographic reference. These are the references of people who have mentioned this work. And that's it. That's a short list. Like, this really hasn't even been discovered by our side. So, not that the Vatican would necessarily reference us as referring to their works. I doubt they would do that, but nevertheless, it was referenced in a 1938 work. Well, when you're browsing through these big works, it's really, really difficult. There's no search features here. It's just basically raw text, really difficult to discern characters and whatnot. So I was like, if I'm going to figure this out, I need to go look up that work, La Manifestatio Heresis Catororum quam fecit Bonacursus. And this was a blessing, truly. That article is actually digitized on JSTOR, which allows you, with a free account, to have up to 100 free articles per month. And here it was. La Manifestatio Heresis Catororum quam fecit Bonacursus. And LAT, Autob LAT.136. Now, the question I was asking myself, this looks like to me like Italian, right? And they mentioned Luca de Artri, so I know that. I know he's the guy that wrote Spicelagium. So the question is, like, how do we find where he's mentioned the Pasiganians, right? So I started going through here, and this is where a tool like an OCR screen snippet tool makes moving this into like Google Translate or something really easy. If you don't understand like Italian, this is easy to cut through. So I started scrolling through and just reading it, and there's a fair amount. I don't even need like the translator here, and if any of you speak Spanish out there, you'll know what I mean, because some of this stuff is like, un segundo manuscrito. I mean, a second manuscript. I mean, that's fairly, some of it's fairly simple, but let's keep going right here. So yeah, I kept scrolling through and I noticed that they gave a lot of back history here, a lot of back history about the manuscript, a lot of back history about Bonacursus, which was helpful. And I kept going, kept going, kept going. Oh, look at this. They're starting to mention folio numbers. Well, that's helpful, but I still didn't mention anything or see anything about the pasagi. So if we come down and we keep going down this article, but if you keep coming down, it did eventually mention right here, adversos hereticos qui caterae appellantur to adversus hereticos passagios. Adversus hereticos passagios. That's what I need right there. Oh, cod ot lat.136 folio 81R. Oh, this is where it's starting to get pretty excited. I was like, oh, is this it? Is this it? Well, let's go. Let's go back here and browse to 81R. So we can go here to 7781R. Adversos hereticos qui passagi. There it is. Folks, let's go back to Spicilagium, for example. Adversos hereticos qui passagi non cuperantur, qualis sit errorum error. Many know the errors of the Passagians. What were these supposed errors? Well, if you keep scrolling down right here, there it is, folks. Observanda Sabbatum. Observanda Sabbatum. There it is. Folks, I don't know that this work has been referenced anywhere in recent times. This is Bonacursus, and he's recognizing these passagi. Folks, here are they who keep the commandments of God and have the faith of Jesus. You know, these people were not Jews, but they kept the commandments of God and they rejected the Sunday. They did not recognize Roman authority. They were blind in the eyes of Rome, but I would wager that they have eyesight in the eyes of God Almighty, the Lord of Sabaoth. These people rejected Sunday. And here is Bonacursus coming after him because they kept the laws of God but refused the laws of man. And here we have Observanda Sabbatum right there. I was pretty excited. I hope you are too. I think it's a pretty cool find. Um, a find that vindicates the great controversy narrative that throughout history, God has had a faithful remnant who keep his commandments, who love him, and that is manifested in obedience to his commandments despite inquisitors coming after them. May we be so faithful.